In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at MetForm by WPMet, who've kindly sponsored this video. What we're going to do is we're going to break this down into two different sections. We're going to take a look at the free version and what that brings to the table, and also take a look at some of the features in the pro version so you can make an informed decision on if this is the right plugin or plugins for you. As always, being a sponsored video, I'm not going to give you any opinions. I'm just going to demonstrate how they work. Okay, so first of all, let me just say this is a plugin for Elementor. So if you want to open up form building options inside Elementor free, this may be a good option for you. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, I've already gone ahead, installed the free version of the plugin, and we'll take a look at the pro version a little later. I've created a page inside my demo site, and we're going to go ahead now and start setting up the form. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new section that's going to hold our form. So let's just set this up to be a single row and column. Then let's come over to our widgets on the left-hand side and search for MetForm. And we're going to drop this widget into our design. So you can see now this says no content is added yet, and that's because we haven't actually created the form. This is the quickest and easiest way of going about it, but you can do it direct from the MetForm entry inside the dashboard, and you're going to kind of get a very similar experience. So what we need to do is click on the Edit Form button on the left-hand side, and that then allows us to select the form we've previously created, so we can reuse that as many times as we need to, or we can go ahead and create a new one. You can see we can start from scratch, or we can use some of the predefined, pre-built templates. Now, some of these are free, some of these are pro, and there are a range of different options inside here to choose from. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to start with something completely new. So let's go and give this a name. We'll call it Sample Form. We'll click to choose the blank form option, and we'll click on Edit Form. Now, that opens up a new window with a sort of similar Elementor experience, but with a lot of extra widgets available specific to building out our form. And this is where MetForm differs considerably from a lot of the other form builders you may be used to. All of this is done inside the Elementor editor with full control over how we want to lay things out, styling, and those kinds of things. So there's a lot of flexibility in this method. So you can see if we take a look at the left-hand side, we've got all the different kind of form widgets. So we've got time, select, text area, multi-select, switch, range sliders, passwords, tons of options inside here, including things like recapture, file upload, and so on. So we can use any of these now inside our designs. So let's go ahead and start building out a really simple form to give you an example of how to get started. First thing we're going to do is just go ahead and insert a container. Once you've got that container inside there, we can go ahead now and insert some different options to create our layout. Now, at the moment, we're going to be using the older version of Elementor until the new container feature comes out. So we're going to be using inner sections, but you can use any of the design tools. So as Elementor updates and brings out the container element, you can start to use that. For now, though, let's just go ahead and use these inner sections. So we're going to just drop a couple of inner sections inside here. Okay, so these are the areas we're going to drop in the various different form fields. So let's come over to the left-hand side. So first of all, let's go ahead and add a couple of text fields in. So we're going to add one in for our name. We're going to go ahead and add one in for email. And we're going to go and add another one in for our subject. Okay, so we've started to put together a basic form, and we can expand this as much as we want. So let's take a look at what we've got option-wise when it comes to actually going ahead and working with all the different form fields. If we select the form field to work with, we take a look on the left-hand side. Now we've got full control over labels, positioning, those kinds of things, as well as full styling options and some advanced features to go ahead and animate and do all those kinds of things should you want to. But let's go in and take a look now. So we can enable or disable the label. So if you're using the sort of placeholder text inside the form field itself, you may want to do away with the option to show the label. Again, these are all styling and personal preference. Then we can give it a name. So you can see by default it's given this sort of blank placeholder name, but we can change that. And we're going to change this to name. Placeholder text, we're just going to put in insert name. And you can see that will update and show us inside the form field element. And then if you want to put in some help text, you can do that inside there. We'll leave that as it is for now. And you can go into the settings and set these to be required and any kind of validation you want to apply. So being as we want this to be a required field, we'll set like that. And you see then we can choose the validation type. We can choose by character length or by word length. We're not too worried about those. We'll leave those as they are for now. And then the warning message. So you can customize the message that will be displayed if someone doesn't fill this form field in. So we can go ahead now and we can repeat this procedure for any of the other fields that we have inside our form currently. So I'm going to quickly go ahead and do that. Okay, so now we've started to create our fields set things up the way that we want. If we want to style these, we can also come into the style section and we can go ahead and customize any of this. So you can see we can change the input color, border, background colors, those kinds of things. Placeholder, we can change that inside there. So that we can just say we want to make this a little darker. You can see we can make that darker. We can use global color. So all the options you would expect for styling, all inside here on a form element or field level, which gives you a ton of control if you want to customize things to your own liking. Okay, so our form is starting to take shape. The next thing we're going to do is just drop in an actual field that allows people to put in their message. So let's go ahead and insert a new inner section. We'll drop that underneath there. And what we're going to do is we're going to just get rid of one of these columns. And we're going to do a search for a text area. So there's our text area field, so we can simply just drop that inside there, and now we've got a text area. So again, you can see all the same options, but with some changes based upon the form field type. So again, let's just take the show label off, and we're just going to put in here message, and we'll just type in insert your message. Settings, again, we can come in and specify this is required, and we can say we want it to by word length, so we can say we want it to set inside here, so they do a minimum length of something like 50 words. And a maximum of, say, 500. So this gives us control then over how much information is going to be put in there, and also stopping having blank fields put in. Even though we set it to be required, people might just type in a couple of characters and expect to kind of leave it at that. This at least gives us some control over that side of things. Okay, so the final thing we want to do is go ahead and put our submit button in, and we'll drop that underneath there. Inserts our submit button. We can control the size of this, so you can make it full width if you want to, set it to left, centered, or right. You can change your text. You can dynamic information inside you if you're using Elementor Pro. And you can see we can go ahead and insert icons and things like that. We're going to leave those as they are. You can see if you've got hidden, you can put an input list inside here, so we can go ahead and we put input names, classes, and so on. That's a little bit more advanced for what I want to show you in this overview. But for now, let's just stick to the basic options inside here. If we jump over to the style options, again, we can come in and we can just adjust this. So we can say we want to change the background color. We'll set this to be one of our global colors. We'll set it to be this green color, and we'll adjust our text color and make that darker. If you want to change the typography, fonts, those kinds of things, you can do all that inside here as well. So now we've set up the basics of our form, and we can go ahead and we can then just finalize all of this by clicking update and close. So that's our form now inserted into our page. It's totally reusable. We can edit this at any point. We can come back and click on edit form, and you can see we can choose our form from the list of forms we've got, edit the form, come back in and make changes to that inside here. So full control over that side of things. So now we've created the form, updated it, saved it, inserted it. How do we actually get it to work? Well, we're going to use the form settings option on the left hand side. If you click on this, this now gives us all the options to control how the form is going to work and how we can set things up. You can see we've got general, which allows us to set the title, change the title if we want to. We can set a blanket sort of submit message when it's been successfully submitted. We've also got some pretty nice controls inside here. For example, you may want to restrict people to be able to use this form. They have to be logged in. Well, you can set this required login, and then they have to be logged in before they can start to use the actual form. We'll just disable that for now. You can also go ahead and capture user browser data if you want to enable this. So this is things like the IP address, the browser name, those kinds of things. Now, obviously, make sure that if you are a GDPR-based company, that you fall inside the guidelines for using GDPR if you're collecting this kind of data. Worth noting that kind of thing, but you have access to that should you want to. Do you want to hide the form after a submission to stop people from actually submitting the form again and again and again? And you can also choose to store entries, and this will keep a copy of all of the entries for any of the forms inside your dashboard. We'll leave that set to yes for now, so when we test this out, I can show you how this all works. Then you can go ahead and you can set up things like the entry title. Do you want to limit the total entries? And you can also do things like count the number of views, stop vertical scrolling, and you can set a redirect after a successful form submission. So instead of just having a message, you may want to send someone to a thank you page. Well, you can do that by simply dropping the link inside here. We leave all those options as they are though for now. Come over to the confirmation section. You can see, do you want to send a confirmation email to the user? So we can open this up and say yes, and then you can fill out the relevant details. So once the form is submitted, it'll come through to the recipient, and also the person that sent it will get a copy of that form. So this is pretty cool. We'll leave that though disabled for now, but it's there and you just need to fill in the relevant information. Notification, do you want to send a notification to the admin? So again, the recipient may not be the admin of the website. It might be going to someone else. This allows you then to notify the admin that an email has been sent. And in much the same way as the confirmation, we can open this up and set up relevant information inside you, including things like the admin notes and so on. Let's just disable that for now. We've also got a couple of integrations available. So you can see with the free version, we can integrate with MailChimp and Slack. So if you want to connect your form up to either of those options, you can do that. And just by simply choosing which one you want to actually enable, you can see we need to then put in the relevant information, your MailChimp list ID, your Slack webhook, those kinds of things. So those options are there for you. Let's just leave everything else as it is though and hit save changes. And that's our form basically completed. So now we can go ahead, update and close so we confirm everything has been done. We can update our page and we can now go ahead and test our new form out. Okay, so here's our form all ready for us to start using. So let's go ahead and fill out our basic information. Okay, so once the form is filled out and I've made sure that I've got enough characters in the actual message, we can go ahead, hit that submit button. So we click submit and you see, there we go, the form has now been successfully submitted. So that's how easy it is to set up your basic forms. Let's just jump back over now into the dashboard and take a look at how the form has been submitted and how it's actually stored inside the dashboard of WordPress. Okay, so we've now jumped back into the dashboard of WordPress. As you can see, we've got a MetForm entry on the left-hand side, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video. And inside here, we can see all our forms. We can adjust settings, get help, or upgrade to the premium version should we want to. So if we click on the entries option, you can see this now gives us the entries that we've got as part of our form. And as you can see, if we click to open this up, we can see all the information from that form submission. All the message, the text, etc., etc., etc. So we've got a really, really simple way of being able to track and see the information about any of the forms that are submitted. So that's pretty cool and easy to see. If you go to the forms section, you can see we've also got the same information inside here, but we've got it in a much more streamlined way. This allows us to see the form and the number of entries. So again, if we click on the entries, it'll take us over to that entries listing and we can see the actual form entries themselves. We go back to forms. You can see we could also export this as a CSV file. So we could easily export this and then use this with Excel or Google Sheets or something like that to track and deal with whatever we want from the forms that have been submitted. So all of this is integrated into the totally free version of the plugin. Now, before we wrap up and go take a look at the actual Pro version and what that brings to the table, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other form fields that we've got as part of our form. So let's take a look on the left-hand side. You can see we've got all the normal ones like text, numbers, dates, select fields, those kinds of things. We've also got lots of other options, things like range sliders, URLs, first name, name for listings, opt-ins, simple captcha. So if we want to add a captcha to this to make sure that it stops us getting spam emails, we can simply drop that inside there. And you can see now we can set up, there's our captcha. Do you want to show the label on here? How do you want to deal with this? Do you want to set it to block or inline? Any help text? So that's a really simple capture option. But we can also use reCAPTCHA if we want to. So if we delete that from there. Take a look at our widgets again. You can see we've got reCAPTCHA. So if we're using Google reCAPTCHA, we can simply drop in the relevant information inside here, connect that up, and then we've got everything set up just by simply going to the settings for MetForm itself. So we've got options to deal with making sure that we don't get lots and lots of junk coming through. Now, another thing that's really nice to see inside a free form builder is the ability to deal with form file uploads. So if we drop the file upload widget inside there, you can see all the normal options are available to us for the styling and labels and all those kinds of things. And if we jump into the settings section, we can again set this as required, but we can also set the file size limit in kilobytes. So we can enable that to limit big files being uploaded. And we can also specify what file types are allowed. You can see we can click and we can add in from lots of the most common ones that are available. So image files, document files, PDFs, those kinds of things. So great to see that we've got that built into the free version. You'll also notice that if you're based in Europe, GDPR is definitely an important thing. And as you can see, we've got an option inside here for GDPR consent. So again, we can drop that into our layout. And you can see GDPR consent. And it gives us information about the options for the checkbox and so on and so forth. So it's a really simple kind of version, but at least it gives you something that says, you know, you consent into this information being supplied, you know, those kinds of things. So that's basically the free version of MetForm. Let's take a look at some of the Pro features now and what the Pro plugin actually brings to the table on top of the pretty impressive range of features you get inside the free version of the plugin. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've installed the Pro version of MetForm. Before we take a look at some of the other widgets and how we can use things like conditional logic and so on, let's take a quick look at the settings and see some of the new features we have inside there. So let's head over to MetForm and go into settings. Now inside here, you can see we've got things broken down and some of the options are available inside the free version, but it's generally fairly limited to things like MailChimp and so on. So let's take a look. If we go into newsletter integration, for example, you can see where we had MailChimp before, we now have Aweber, ActiveCampaign, GetResponse, ConvertKit, and Automizy at this point in time. And all you need to do if you want to use any of these is just drop in the relevant information from any of your accounts to connect things up, and then you can use that in any of your forms. Same thing goes then for Google Sheets integration. You can see we can connect this up to Google Sheets and we can just basically have our responses saved into a Google Sheet, which is pretty useful. And also we've got CRMs, and this is connected up to Help Scout, HubSpot, and Zoho. So all relatively popular different CRMs, Google Sheets, and newsletter integrations. You'll also notice we've got payment info, and this means we can now create forms that require payment. At this point in time, we can use PayPal and Stripe. And again, all we need to do, drop in your PayPal email address and your PayPal token. You can enable sandbox mode if you want to test things up, which I would highly recommend you do. And also the same thing goes for Stripe. You can see we can connect things up, and there's help and information about how to get started here. And then finally, you've got your thank you page, which you can create a thank you page, or you can select one from inside here. So you can see we can pull it from any of the pages we have as part of our site. So all of these things are integrated into the plugin inside the Pro version. So let's go back to our forms. Let's open up our form and let's edit that with Elementor one more time. So now all our normal widgets are there. We've also got one additional one inside here, which is credit card, which allows us to, as its name would suggest, select and credit card details. So we can drop in credit card details, and if we scroll down a little bit further, you can see now we've got some unique features for MetForm Pro. So things like calculations, if you want to calculate things, if you wanted to have something on there that you want to have a running total and so on, you can use the calculation option. Image select, toggle select, those kinds of things. You've also got Google Map locations, a simple repeater field, color picker, payment methods, and so on. You can also drop in signatures. You can create multi-step forms, and you can also set to like and dislike. Okay, so most of those are relatively straightforward and self-explanatory, and I don't want to go into too much detail with this because I think the video tutorial will probably be about 2 hours long if I try to cover all of these. But let me just show you some of the features that I think are most useful, and I know it's something that a lot of people will ask for. First of all, we've got conditional logic. So to start working with the conditional logic, all you need to do is simply select the field that you want to work with. We'll select this file upload field as an example, and you'll see on the left-hand side we have a new section, a new tab called conditional logic. We can enable this, and you can see now we can go ahead and configure how this works. Now, if you've ever used conditional logic in forms or anything else like that before, this is all going to be relatively straightforward and something that you've already seen and probably accustomed to working with. So first of all, you've got your match criteria, and this is basically and or. So you can set up how complex and how the way conditions actually have to be met for multi-condition conditions. Does that make sense? We leave this set to and for now. Then you can choose the action whether it's going to show the field or hide the field. Again, relatively simple and straightforward. And then you've got the option to choose what happens. So you can see we can say if something, match the comparison, and what happens. So for example, if an input field, we drop the name of the field in. So let's just say, for example, name. If name is not empty or equal to or not equal to, you can see we can then go ahead and say what the match value is. So let me just give you an example of how this works. Let's just get rid of all this a second. Let's start all this from complete scratch. We'll delete this. And what we're going to do is we're going to simply go ahead and put in a checkbox inside this empty area. And you can see checkbox pulls in all those check options. And again, we can go ahead and configure this. We can enable it and show the labels and those kinds of things. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this upload file question. So you can see now that puts the label inside there. We're going to get rid of the second and the third options because we just simply want to have yes as a checkbox. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this up. You can see we can now go ahead and give this a name. So we'll just say we'll call this upload. You can see check option 1. So we can say we're just going to set this yes, upload a file. You can set your option value, and we're going to set this to upload. And you can set the option status to active or disable. We're going to leave those as they are, not worry too much about them. And again, you can add additional items inside here if you want to, and do all those kinds of things. Okay, so now we need to just go ahead and insert that file upload. So let's go and find that. Let's add that to our layout. What we're going to do now is making sure that's selected. We're going to come to our conditional logic option, and inside there we're going to enable conditional logic. We're going to basically say now, and show field. We'll leave that as it is. We'll add an item. What we're going to do is if, now we just need to put the name of our little checkbox field in, which we called upload. So if upload is not empty, show this field. So basically all we're doing is saying that if this is checked, show our file upload field. Really simple example, really simple example. But it should show you how simple the conditional logic actually is. Okay, so I've refreshed our form. You can see there's nothing inside the upload file. Let's just check that, and boom, there's our file upload. Uncheck it, and it disappears. As simple as that. Really, really relatively simple to create this conditional logic. And like I say, you could stack more conditions on top of each other. You can set up the qualifier, whether it's and, or, and you can set up all different kinds of conditions to show or hide different elements, different parts of your form. Really, really simple to do. Now, another thing that's been added into the Pro version is additional validation options. As we saw in the first part of this video with the free option, when we go ahead and insert the sort of text area, we had some basic validation options. We had by word length and by character length. We now have expression based. So if you open that up, we can now create custom expressions inside here to get even more comprehensive on how we check and validate any of the different fields we have. And I would recommend checking the documentation out to see how this whole validation thing works. Now, the final thing I want to show you in this video before I wrap things up is the simple repeater field. Now, if you've ever used advanced custom fields and you've used a repeater inside there, you'll know how incredibly useful this can be. Well, let me just show you how this actually works and give you a really simple demonstration. So what we're going to do is we're going to just go ahead and we're going to find that repeater. So there's our simple repeater. Let's go ahead and drag that underneath our main message. Now you can see this inserts a placeholder. So you can see it gives it a name, simple repeater, and just gives us a text field and an add button. Now, let me just quickly explain what a repeater does. If you wanted someone to input some information, for example, like a make and a model of a vehicle, for example, but you didn't know how many vehicles they wanted to add, you could make a repeater which allows them to just keep on adding that same information for each of those vehicles inside just the one form. Very, very powerful feature. You can do the same thing inside here. So let me just show you now. So we've put our first form element in, our first field for our simple repeater. Now we can just simply come down and add more. If we open this up first of all, though, you can see we can choose to show the label, and we'll just change this to make. And you can see we can set this to be text, number, email, lots of different things. Great if you want to do this for something like social media, where you wanted someone to maybe sign up to something and put in their social media accounts, where you could have them add as many as they want without having to know how many fields to put in. But we're going to keep this really, really simple and just have some simple text fields. But you can, like I say, have more. You can then go ahead, give them input names and placeholder information. So we're going to change the input placeholder and just put this to be make. And you see that fills it out. So what we could do is we can hide that label from there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add another item in. So let's click on add item. So you can see same kind of thing again. We're going to change this now to model. We're going to remove the show repeater label, and we're going to change the placeholder and put model inside there. Again, we can change the input name, we can change the type and those kinds of things. And what we're going to do is we're going to set this to be a simple inline layout. So we say inline, and we're just going to put basic details for the actual name for this section. So we've created a really simple repeater, but you're probably thinking, well, what exactly does it do? Let's update this. We'll head over now to our test page with our form in, and you can see there's our basic details for our make and model. So let's just put make, we'll put Ford in, and model, we'll just put Focus. Okay, so we put one vehicle in. Well, we want to add another one, so let's go ahead and click on add, and we've now added a second one in. So now we could go ahead and just call this Ford, and we're going to have model Mustang. And you can see we can keep on adding and adding and adding, and all these will be automatically added into our form. And when it's submitted, all of these repeater fields will be transmitted over via our email and sent to wherever we kind of want. Really, really quite powerful feature that in itself is worth taking a look at if you have forms and you want to work with more advanced forms. Very, very useful. Now, this is just scratching the surface of the kinds of things you can do with these plugins, but hopefully it's whet your appetite and shown you some examples of the kind of things you can achieve with it relatively easily. As always, all the applicable links are in the description below. If you've got any comments, questions, or feedback on this video, drop those in the comment section as well. My name is Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.